there. Happy
We
Monday.
made it.
The 5th of July.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, right. How was your 4th of July? Was it good?
It was nice. It was
Yeah.
quiet. It was relaxing. It was peaceful, and I have minimal complaints. There was a little bit of excitement, but nothing much to write home about.
Nothing much to write home about? Okay. That's
Laughing
not
toys
terrible.
and
That's not bad.
no, I have no complaints about that.
I did nothing.
I was bragging to somebody about how I sleep. Did ya? Did you sit out by the pool?
Yeah, kind of in the backyard a little bit. Okay, so I got what I did there. Hopefully this will go through. Hopefully. Okay, sweet. Right. All right.
There we go.
So today we're going to be talking about the Strictly Stalking podcast. And before we get started and jump through, I wanted to just do a couple of little content notes. So first off, just like a content warning that we are going to be talking about stalking and all of the related stalking and harassment, all of the related activities and behaviors that come along with those crimes. If it's something that you feel is a sensitive topic for you, this may not be the podcast you want to listen to of ours, excuse me. We will, as always, we're going to do our very best to be as respectful as possible and present the information as factually as we can in certain cases, but we will have opinions. So know that in advance. I will have a lot of opinions. And today, this is going to be a two-parter. So today we're probably going to talk about just stalking in general, like what it is, some of the stuff that comes into it, like regarding the law and punishments and how it's handled on the legal and law enforcement side and from the victim's perspective. And then we'll talk about a couple of the big take-home messages from the podcast, because as you listen to it, there's a lot of stuff that kind of is repetitive in terms of take-home messages, like bigger ideas and messages that are repeated experiences or feelings of victims. So we'll talk about that. And then Wednesday's podcast, which will be part 2, we are going to discuss some specific episodes that we just found to be like off the chain or, made good points or were insane, depending, like whatever, however we define that word. So we'll delve more specifically into the podcast episodes on Wednesday. But today we're going to talk like a 100-foot overview of it. And you'll probably hear a lot of concepts and things discussed repeated, because a lot of it comes up over and over and over again. And one last thing before we get started, right now I just put into our chat and in the description of the YouTube channel. It will be in the description on Twitch after we stop going live. I have listed a bunch of resources. If you are someone who is the victim of harassment or stalking behavior, there are a list of resources there that you can reach out to and that can guide you and provide some advice and assistance. And as always, if you feel like your life or safety is being threatened or in danger, please just call 911 directly. So having said that, let us jump right in. And I will put a reading list of things that we either readings we talked about or were additional readings that I got, data that I got in the description boxes after the show's over. So if you want to do some further reading, you'll have links to that there. So to begin, where to begin? Stalking.
Oh, where to begin?
Oh God.
There's no beginning. I
think everybody has an idea of what stalking is. Like, it's not a topic where it's, nobody has spoken about. But I have to say, as somebody who even considers themselves pretty, I don't want to say educated, but pretty aware of certain crimes and types of things, like I was surprised by what I didn't know about stalking, in terms of from the victim perspective and the legal and law perspective, legal and crime and punishment perspective. I didn't really know a lot about it. And so listening to this podcast and listening to what folks were experiencing when they were trying to get help was very eye-opening to me, because I guess I'm naive and I just expected that, law enforcement would be able to do more than they can, or they did. And
or they want to.
or they want to, or that I thought that if you feel threatened by something, that's enough to have somebody take it seriously. But unfortunately, as you learn more, you listen more, you dig in and start doing more reading and research, you find out that that's not the case. One of the things I did before going live today, that we did some research ourselves, and I was looking for some data, I had some ideas of numbers I thought would be interesting to look at. And some of that information was, what are the most common crimes that stalkers end up getting indicted on or convicted on, because there's a lot that falls underneath that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Or, how, what percentage of them or numbers of them actually are caught, what's the duration of time. And it's impossible to get this data.
Right.
Partly because the states all have individual laws and they're all different. And for me to get that information, I would have to do a state by state search and look for very specific crimes to get those numbers. And even that probably wouldn't be a good indication of what the true numbers are. So that is really kind of a nebulous. These numbers are very nebulous when we start talking about data, right. Especially when we talk about cases of stalking, because it's not a crime that's always reported. It's, like most domestic violence issues, it's something that goes very underreported. People are afraid to report the numbers. And one of the things that really, really disappointed me was I was looking for, just some national data, statistics, a number of people, number of victims, any kind of stuff I could get to. And I was really bummed because the most recent information that I could find was from 2015. So, and that was done by, the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey. And the last one of those they did was in 2015. And I believe that it's a survey that's conducted by it's conducted by our government, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I believe it falls under, let me just see if I can see it's from the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, it's the Division of Violence Prevention. So the last report that the CDC site on stalking is linking to is actually the 2010-2012 report. And I found one from 2015 that was, that was probably the most recent. So we haven't done any kind of comprehensive survey like that in a long time. And even that is not strictly stalking. That's all sorts of intimate partner domestic violence that's included in that. It does break it out into stalking. But again, we're not talking about current numbers here.
And that's only for intimate partner and domestic stalking. That's not for the random strangers. And that's the first of maybe two themes that we've noticed on the podcast is one, the lack of a national registry for stalkers.
Yes.
And two, the fact that in order to get any long-term punishment, long-term prison sentences for stalkers, they have to be convicted on other crimes. Even with aggravating factors for conviction on stalking charges, the maximum sentence is going to be 5 years.
Yeah.
In order to get any extended sentencing, they have to be convicted for mail fraud or wire fraud or any violent crimes and stuff like that. And then that takes it out of the realm of stalking altogether. They'll often drop the stalking charges completely and charge them with some sort of violent crime to get a longer sentence.
Well, let's just jump in.
Would they even be? Would a stalking registry even work?
I don't know, but let's just jump in right away and let's right off that, and let's just let's do some definitions here. So under U.S. federal law, someone commits the felony of stalking if that person places another person in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury to him or herself. And I just want to interject here. When we start hearing things like course of conduct, reasonable fear, put a pin in that in your head, because we're going to come back to those concepts in a moment, okay? Injury to him or herself, his or her immediate family member or spouse or intimate partner. Causes, attempts to cause, or could reasonably be expected to cause substantial emotional distress to the target of their conduct, or acts with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate, or place the victim under surveillance in order to kill, injure, harass, or intimidate that person. Now, in order to violate the federal as opposed to a state law, a person must either travel across state lines into or out of tribal land or engage in interstate commerce in the commission of the crime. Most people charged with the federal crime of stalking have engaged in interstate commerce by simply using a telephone, the internet, or the U.S. Postal Service. The federal anti-stalking law expressly includes the use of electronic communication system as a means of violating the federal anti-stalking law. So that's the federal definition of the federal law definition of stalking. Now, off of that, every states have their own definitions of what legally qualifies as stalking, and that is where things get kind of hairy. Okay.
Right.
So, so let's see. Federal law provides some tools to combat cyber stalking and stalking. It's a federal crime punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. But it's also, but certain forms of stalking may also be prosecuted under other federal laws. But this was the Interstate Stalking Act, and then was signed by President Clinton in 1996. And then this has kind of been rolled into the Violence Against Women Act. And that is what is usually cited now if you're seeing somebody being prosecuted under the federal stalking law. A lot of times it will be rolled into with the Violence Against Women's Act to kind of help get with the sentencing of it. So, right. So that is something. So now when we go back to that, definition, so here are, this is some of the terms that are used. Okay. And you'll find these terms in both federal and state law. Okay. So course of conduct. In general, a single act will not amount to stalking, as that term is defined by federal law. Stalking requires a course of conduct, which courts have held means a pattern of conduct made up of two or more acts intended to accomplish a particular purpose, such as intimidation. So just doing something once is not going to count as stalking. Courts have defined harassment as it is commonly understood: repeated words, conduct, or action that serve no legitimate purpose and are directed at a specific person to annoy, alarm, or distress that person. Substantial emotional distress, as that term is used in the federal anti-stalking statute, is mental distress, suffering, or anguish, including depression, shame, humiliation, shock, embarrassment, grief, anxiety, or fear. Now, let me just append something to this because it's not said here. That also means that these feelings have to be something that any reasonable person would also feel if they were under the same in the same situation. So just because you personally may feel distressed, upset, humiliated, threatened, if you take it to court and the judge doesn't feel like a reasonable person, you don't provide evidence that a reasonable person, someone else might feel that way, or a jury, you can basically lose your case. Like it's about what would any reasonable person feel under that situation, which is kind of crappy if you ask me, but anyway. In order to convict a person under the federal anti-stalking statute, a U.S. attorney must prove that a stalking defendant acted with the intent to cause death, injury, fear of injury or death, or substantial emotional distress to the victim. Often, his intent is proven by introducing the defendant's own threatening voicemail messages, emails, texts, Facebook page postings, etc. Every state has some version of an anti-stalking law that makes it a crime to engage in the conduct that is prohibited under the federal law. So if a person stalks another individual but does not do so in a way that falls under the federal law, for example, the stalker does not use the phone, internet, or mail, and does not travel across state lines to engage in conduct, I don't know how that's possible at this point, but anyway, that person may still be charged under state anti-stalking laws. And a person convicted of stalking faces a possible prison sentence not to exceed 5 years, a fine not to exceed $250,000, or both. Where the defendant's stalking conduct results in the death or physical injury to another person, a conviction may lead to a sentence of life in prison. So you can't even get life if you killed somebody. Like, I love it.
Premeditated.
Right, premeditated.
Life.
So this is where what Angie was saying was that they're usually kind of piled together with other offenses so that they can get a nice stack of felony behavior, misdemeanor behavior, any other charges, so that when they bring this to trial, there's just more and more stuff that can add any additional time onto somebody's sentence so that they can stay in prison for as long as possible. And, unfortunately, as we've seen in the podcast, that sometimes the court just throws out some of these charges and says, either there's not enough evidence or, X, Y, and Z is covered under your first charge of A, B, and C. So why are we double dipping here? So it's all up. Certain stuff that seems to be all under the interpretation of the court, right, which is really difficult to sit with when you think about it. I can sit here and have a problem with it. I can't imagine being a victim of a stalker for, X amount of time and being told that, none of this really adds up to anything more than possibly like 5 months in prison for somebody, or, time served or probation or whatever the hell, or you don't have a case whatsoever, right?
It's not even enough to get a restraining order.
So
you don't deserve to be safe or protected.
Yep. So let's talk about just a little more of a bigger picture here. Stalking tactics can include unwanted phone calls, sending unwanted email, IMs, text messages, voice messages, or social media messages, approaching a victim or showing up unwanted, such at the victim's home, workplace, or school, leaving a strange or potentially threatening items for the victim to find, watching, following, or tracking a victim, sneaking into the victim's home or car and doing things to scare the victim to let them know the perpetrator had been there. It says technology has made communicating with others easier than ever, but those advances have also created more options and choices to threaten and harass victims. Most victims are commonly stalked by someone they know, such as an intimate partner or acquaintance. And so from that intimate partner and sexual violence survey, the couple of the stats that we are rolling on the bottom are what we see. So 1 in 6 women and 1 in 17 men have been stalked at some point in their lives. Now, this is from the 2010-2012 report. 21% of female victims, 13% of male victims report being stalked as minors, so under the age of 18. And nearly 54% of female victims and 41% of male victims experience stalking before the age of 25.
And that's just by people that they know.
Imagine. Right. And that's just by the people who are willing to report and, respond to these questions. Right. So
about people that they know.
Right. So having said that, The other thing that we want to make sure we get across is that unlike a lot of, well, no, like most domestic violence this is a kind of, this is something that affects everybody. It's not choosy. This can be male or female. This can be male, female, non-binary, however you identify. This is not a crime that is perpetrated solely against one group. It does not discriminate. It does not discriminate by age either. There are plenty of young people and older people who are experiencing stalking. There are plenty of people who haven't. Yeah, has no timeline whatsoever. This is also, it's one of these crimes that can be committed for the long term. I mean, the long haul. We have plenty of people have had started at one point when they were younger and have still made it into their 20s and 30s, still being harassed by the same person. Or
people have reported being stalked for 40 and 50 years.
Right. And, yes, it can be done, perpetuated by somebody who is known to you, whether it be an intimate partner or somebody you know in your domestic life. But it's also a crime that can be done just by anybody. It can be something, a stranger who decides that they want to, perpetuate this behavior for whatever reason they find. It could be as simple as, they saw you on the street and thought you looked at them a certain way. I mean, who the hell knows? It's one of these
your ex-partner's new partner.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. There's not even a direct relationship that has to happen there. And as we've seen in the podcast, it doesn't have to, it definitely most in fact could be your ex-partner's new partner. Probably more common than we think. I can think of a couple of cases off the top of my head. So it's like an equal opportunity crime made easier by the technology and the society we live in right now. And I'm trying to think of how I want to go, the order that I want to talk about this in. I know. So let's talk about some of one of the big things that, all right, so you're stalked, you've being stalked by an ex or even a stranger, as we've seen on the podcast. And, you're receiving lots of unsolicited email. You're getting in some cases, people are visiting you at work or just show up, or, behavior that makes you uncomfortable. You're starting to feel uncomfortable, or it's not right. It could be a student of yours staying after class constantly and trying and speaking to you and asking you out, and it's inappropriate. Anything that makes you feel like it's inappropriate. You're feeling a little threatened, whatever, and you've kind of compiled some evidence, or you have some examples to show. The most common first step is to seek some kind of restraining order. Is usually the route that folks go. So they would, probably if they're trying to do something, or they are aware, or somebody's guiding them or helping them, hopefully they've called the police, filed some police reports, or stockpiling evidence, and getting to a place where getting a temporary restraining order can happen immediately, and then with the intention of getting a longer term restraining order. So let's talk about restraining orders for a moment, because this will tie into a few things that we already said. So protection orders, the first line of defense for victims is a civil protection or restraining order that has the effect of enjoining the stalker behavior. So theoretically, it's supposed to curb the behavior immediately by giving them this order, giving you an order of protection. They're designed to restrict an offender from making contact with the victim, appearing in a particular place, such as home or work. Sanctions include contempt of court, fines, and jail time or prison sentences. In a number of states, including California, Colorado, Delaware, Maine, South Carolina, Texas, and West Virginia, anti-stalking legislation has prompted more serious sanctions for violations of protection orders. So right there, you already see that's like a sliding scale of what happens to people if they decide to violate them. And one of the things we heard over and over again in the podcast was that people had no problem violating protection orders.
Right.
Whether they did it right after they were served Or, they waited that duration and like literally had it marked on a calendar and knew the day that was up. And the next day I would start again, right? Like clockwork. So, and they usually start out like a temporary restraining order, which is a short period of time. I believe it's up to a year that they can go while you're getting your steps together. And then they can get extended for any length. You can get a restraining order for any length of time, up to the point where you can get a lifetime restraining order, which takes
depending on where you're at.
Level of evidence to show this, but you can get up to that point. So
I want to take a second and swing back to the level of evidence and getting to the point where you can get a restraining order, because I think that, I'm not going to say most because I've never been stalked, but I can imagine that when you find yourself in the position where you're like, oh my God, am I being stalked? Because like you said, one time does not equal a course of action. That's just one time where somebody's being weird to you or sent you something weird or sent you some off-putting, nice guy or nice girl message, whatever.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're getting a bunch of messages, and that could even be 2 times, could just be something odd. But then all of a sudden you're uncomfortable. And I feel like if you feel like you're uncomfortable, like you can take that as the person on the receiving end of that and just consider it stalking. Like you're uncomfortable. And here's
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And that for me, like, in my opinion, I would encourage you at that point to just start gathering, like never delete. Yes. Like a lot of people want to just delete screenshots and emails and texts and everything because it makes sense to just want to get it away from you. But unfortunately, as we've seen in all of these podcasts that we've been listening to, like, it's up to you, unfortunately, to build your own case.
I posted
that link to the myonrecord.com. It's an app that helps you immediately collect your thoughts. It lets you score your feelings, so that you can say how scared you are.
And I was just going to say that. Document how you felt the moment you got it.
And just save everything, even if you have to get yourself a separate hard drive for these interactions, as disgusting as it is to have to go through those things, because otherwise the police just aren't going to care, and the judge certainly isn't going to care.
Right.
And the second thing is to gathering evidence is to tell people, and later on in the podcast we'll talk about, like, when you're on the other side and you're that person's friend, how you can help your friend who's being stalked. Because a third theme that we heard over and over and over again was, my friends just didn't understand. My friends just got tired of hearing about it. I got tired of talking about it because it controlled my life, and it was all my friends. My friends just didn't want to hear about it anymore.
Right.
And, like, a stalking victim doesn't just lose their freedom. They tend to lose their family. They lose their friends. They lose their jobs. They lose their finances. They lose everything. And as a friend to a victim of stalking, like, we can do more. And that's what this podcast is. That's what Strictly Stalking is. That's what all these other podcasts that highlight stalking and highlight these stalking victim stories. We can do more as friends of victims of stalking. So, we'll talk about that a little bit later in this, but I wanted to just circle back that there's faster ways to get your feelings down than, oh crap, I got to go find my journal and write this down, and your hands are shaking and you don't want to talk about it. Well, you can just grab your phone and go into this app and, talk about it.
So related to this, when we talk about restraining orders and naming evidence, so like eligibility restrictions for restraining orders vary in states. And they also can limit the protected value. So they're saying, for example, some states require a legally recognizable relationship between the victim and offender, for example, marriage, for a restraining order to be issued. Others will not issue an order unless there's a finding of actual physical abuse. And then beyond such restrictions, restraining orders are far less than a guarantee of protection. Commenters note that approximately 4 out of every 5 orders are violated. Less than 20% of these violations result in an arrest. There is an insufficient law enforcement commitment to protective orders, and taking out a protective order at best does little to protect against future victimization, and at worst may incite a stalker to retaliate against the victim. All of which we heard about and was highlighted in the in the podcast.
Pretty much.
It says, over time, prosecutors have come to rely on various offenses found in most state penal statutes, prohibiting harassment, threats, threatening, or intimidating behavior. So this is what we're talking about: telephone threats, to kind of throw on there. And they said that these statutes are inadequate because they fail to account for the repetitive nature of stalking, which is a primary feature of the offense. Consider the full range of bizarre behaviors found within stalking activity, and recognize anything less than an explicit threat as a crime. So again, we're seeing this where unless they're explicitly saying, I'm going to kill you.
And even when they
do that, depending upon the context of how they said it or how someone else interprets that, that might not even help you. I mean, it's not funny. I'm not laughing because I find it funny. I'm laughing because I find it insane.
Because it's exasperating.
Yeah. And then we're going to talk about, here we go with this course of conduct and intent again. So the requirements of state anti-stalking statutes generally require proof of a course of conduct, which means like the repetitive nature of this, and distinct threats by the offender that cause an actual fear of death or injury on the part of the victim. The former requires
they require a proof of a course of conduct, and then they absolutely disregard it.
Right. The former requires that the offender must have engaged in a persistent course of purposeful action amounting to a pattern of behavior. This may consist of non-consensual communication, for example, obsessive surveillance, lying in wait, or physical harassment. A majority of states specify the number of incidents required to constitute a pattern of behavior or course of conduct. That just kills me. That kills me. So if somebody does it 4 times instead of 5 times, does that not mean that it's a pattern of behavior? Like I have to wait that 5th. I mean, that just drives me crazy. To me, it should be as soon as they have the behavior, if I feel like I'm being threatened or afraid, you should do something about it. And I damn well feel like if you're doing it a second time, you should take me seriously about this.
Right.
Statutes differ with respect to the threat requirement. Some states require either a threat or conduct. Others mandate both a threat and conduct for prosecution. Still, others impose threat, conduct, and intent requirements. A minority of jurisdictions require the stalker's behavior constitute an objectively credible threat. That is a threat that would create fear in a reasonable person in like circumstances. The intent requirements of states and statutes vary considerably as well. Most state statutes require that the offender purposefully or willingly intended to instill or cause fear. Others require lesser mental states, for example, knowing negligent creation of fear. Only a few states omit the intent requirement, and for obvious reasons, the more significant the intent requirement, the more difficult it is to obtain the proof necessary to secure a conviction or a protective order. So this, just reading that is exasperating. How many times during the podcast have we heard that somebody brings threatening emails or, is reporting on a conversation that happened, and the officer who's taking the statement is like, well, that doesn't sound like a threat to me. It's like, well, it does to me because I know what they're saying. I know what they're talking about. It's something. Right. And that's the thing that we need to remember when we talk about stalking, especially when we're talking about it with somebody who's known to the victim. But it happens on both, and this is a feature of both stranger and someone known, is that these people know what they're doing. Right. They do everything that they do is done in secret. and so that they will not be caught. So everything they do, every word they write, everything they say, every action they take is done in a way that could be like, you'll know what they mean, but somebody else who has no idea what's been going on or knows this person or knows any history or anything about the situation might be like, I don't know what the big deal is about that.
Yes. Well, and the other thing that I noticed was the tide seems to turn in a lot of these cases, specifically when the victims of the stalking came in contact with either a victim advocate at one of these websites or a cyber crimes officer. Right. So that is another avenue to try to get just like call 911 and insist on getting a police report started so you have a case file, and then the next day like try to get your case turfed off to the cyber crimes department if you can, or get your case number going, and then try to connect with one of these advocacy groups and get an advocate on your side, because they can help you navigate this minefield, this unwelcome, caustic environment that just doesn't believe that you're going through what you're going through and thinks that, you should be able to just deal with this. And you probably slept with the guy, right?
Right. And I think if you are going like a route where you're trying to prosecute or convict, or go for a lengthier order of protection or something along those lines, these advocates can be so important, because they can actually go to court for you or with you and accompany you. So and they can handle, like, we've heard victims saying, like, I just need the advocate to deal with this. Like, the advocate can return these phone calls. So, like, if you're in an emotional place where you can't handle talking about it or getting news about your situation, they can do that for you. They can be your voice, and, they can speak on your behalf when you can't. I would also say, and I know it's not available for everybody because people can't afford it, but if you can afford any, from free, so if you can get your own, consulting a lawyer early on might also be a really, really good option. Somebody who specializes in like domestic violence or, any kind of harassment, like, just to get an opinion, a legal opinion on what the laws are in your state. Yes. So that, you can have a better idea of what you're dealing with and what kind of evidence you'll need to start documenting or keeping better collection of. Even if you're a man, like this is a safe place. This is a safe discussion for men as well, but I would recommend like looking for a lawyer who focuses on women's issues. Yeah. Because at least you might even, be able to get some sort of consultation or something, like, or recommendation or something like that. Right. So, there are resources out there. It just sometimes seems like they're really hard to get to. Yeah, so much more now. But, the overwhelming feeling is that getting anybody to take you seriously or to listen to you is probably the biggest hurdle of everything. Yes. There's a lot of police. I don't know what I'll tell you, I don't know what the modern police office department looks like these days, but there's a lot of police officers taking statements going, I don't know what to do with this. Like, this is like a email, like harassing over online. I don't know what do we do with that? Like, that's not something, a lot of like, just get off the internet, you'll be okay kind of situation. Not really understanding that, today it's like almost impossible to get off the internet. And a lot of people need to for their work or, like their lives are on the internet. So that's not really a practical advice for people. which is something we heard a lot of in the podcast over and over again. Something else so let's just go back to the idea that there's no national registry for stalking victims. Okay, so one of the things that comes up a lot and that most of the victims in the series are pushing for or are constantly, advocating for is a national stalking registry, akin to like, I don't know, the child, like, what do they call it? The
sexual predator
registry. Where, if you've got a protection order out against you or have been like convicted of even misdemeanor crimes that have anything to do with like the stalking arena, you'll be put into a national database that theoretically, can be searched nationwide. And that way, if you move and your stalker decides to go with you, you don't have to start over from square one, with trying to get it can pop up and somebody can see that this person has a history with you that goes back to whatever time period and whatever states. We've heard on the podcast, and I'm going to find which one it was, because it was something like, this one was being stalked, and they come to find out after the fact that the guy has like 14 restraining orders against him from like 14 different people, that nobody knew because there's no place to check that. Like, I think she found out because the private investigator that she had went and pulled records. But like the police, the police didn't do it. The investigators did first. The private investigator did first. And there was no, if there was a central database that could be checked, this could have been discovered earlier. Most of these people who do this have a history of this behavior in some way, yes, shape, or form, whether it's, mild, like little obsessive stalking, and then it grows progressive over time, or they started out like full-fledged stalking, and you might be one of like 50 people that this person is stalking at the moment. So, yep, none of this behavior is stuff that just happens in a vacuum. These are people who this is a pattern of behavior for them. This to them is a normal type of behavior, whether they're doing it for infatuation purposes, revenge or vindictive purposes, or just like, I don't know what kind of obsessive thought they have about you purposes. This to them is completely a normal reaction. Like, behavior is perfectly okay. So, to think that you may be the only person that this person's been doing this to, I would, is something to keep in the back of your mind. You might want to push to have this person like vetted a little further or do something thinking, because you might find some information that could be helpful. We've seen a lot of people on the podcast hire private investigators to help them because they are getting nowhere with the police. So they hire PIs to do some background investigation on them and see what's going on. How many times have we heard of gifts being left or things being left by the house that only the victim would know? But if you brought it to law enforcement, they'd be like, I don't know what the hell this is about.
It's just a teddy bear.
Right.
It's just a teddy bear. They just have a crush on you. Why are you being so mean?
Right. It's awful. It's really awful. So that was a huge thing that come up. And the other huge point that I kept hearing over and over and over again on the podcast was the, advice or like pleading of victims saying, trust your instincts, like trust them. Doesn't matter how nice, polite, friendly, wonderful, respected, well-regarded somebody is. If you feel like there's something off, go with that feeling, because it's probably absolutely 100% correct. Like at least almost every one of these stories was kind of like, I thought they were kind of off when I met them, but I gave them the benefit of the doubt.
There were stories on this podcast of people being stalked by celebrities. I mean, by people who, from all outward appearances, were successful, intelligent, should have been well-adjusted people who just were nuts.
And it's not, we're not talking about men and women who skulk around in the darkness and like are in their basement. These are, these can be professional, well-respected in their professions, in their communities, in their churches, whatever. People who this is the side of them, they choose what side they're going to show. And, which makes it all the worse for the victim, because now you're fighting against that as well, because, they only show that side to people. They don't show this, the victimizer side of their to everybody, or their angry or aggressive side to everyone. Yes. So, that is something. So if your gut instinct is somebody's bad news, go with it. I mean, after listening to like 50 episodes of this podcast, I sat my daughters down and said that to them. I was like, trust yourself. If you feel like somebody's not good or not safe, or you just don't like what, how they're making feel, just go walk away. Go find an adult in charge. Come, just get away from them, because 9 times out of 10, you're probably absolutely correct. I would say 99.9% out of 100, you're absolutely correct. And even if you're not, oh well, don't worry about it. You don't want to make yourself feel bad. It's the absolute entitlement that some of these people have to these folks that's just like absurd.
To their entire being, to everything, to their inner thoughts, to their property, to their bodies, to their comfort, to their everything. They take everything from these people.
The other thing also to, remember about this crime is that the people who are committing it on the whole, like, I definitely, don't get me wrong, there are definitely some like shady, crazy people in this bunch. Like there's they fall into different categories, but these people for the most part are extraordinarily charming and, are able to manipulate people really well and know how to talk a good game so that they can fool everybody else. So, this, don't feel like it's your own fault for falling for it, because this is what they do. They practice this behavior by doing it over and over and over again. And, yes, it's not you. You're not crazy. They do make sure that other people think that they're the most wonderful person on the planet and that they would never do something like that. Going as far as to like actively working or talking against such behavior, but on the DL, doing it to somebody else. Think of any crazy scenario that you can come up with, and it's probably happened or happened to somebody.
Yes. Or is happening currently.
To somebody. I don't know if you saw this, but was it 2 weeks ago? Is one of those random things where like scrolling through Twitter, a tweet catches your eye. Did you see this thing about Eddie Deason? Okay, well, you don't have Twitter, but it was on Facebook too. All right, so if you don't know who Eddie Deason was, he's an actor and a comedian, and he played the geek Eugene in Grease, and Grease too. Okay. And so either a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I saw something retweeted. It was from a waitress at a restaurant in Maryland where he lives. So he's been harassing this woman for months. In the sense that, he went on Facebook and defended all of it. Let me see if I can find it. So here we go. This was from a week ago. So actor Eddie Deason, best known for playing Eugene Felsnick in the movie Grease, is being accused of harassment by a waitress. Deason, 64, went on Facebook earlier this week and let me get rid of that. Stop. Ranted about a woman, Carol Lashbaugh, in his hometown of Cumberland, Maryland. In the since deleted post, Deason insulted Lashbaugh's appearance, commented on her wearing fake eyelashes, and called her an attention whore. Lashbaugh clapped back and called Deason a creep who comes into my work at least once a week and calls and asks other servers for my schedule. So her original post was, Eddie Deason is a fucking creep who comes into my work at least once a week, calls and asks other servers for my schedule. And if he comes in and I'm not wearing makeup, he leaves. And this grown-ass old man has the balls to post on this on his Facebook about me. I'm losing my mind. So he had then,
did hear about
she
that.
had then appended or included screenshots of the Facebook posts that he made, right? And I'm trying to see if I can get the actual, because that was cut off. So let me see so the Facebook, to all my Facebook friends and pals, okay, I'm sure all of you have heard about my recent encounter with a sweet, innocent waitress who I supposedly traumatized. Well, it turns out this girl is not so sweet or innocent. She's an attention whore. She's a small town, lonely girl who is desperately craving attention. She's been spreading nasty, vile rumors about me here in my hometown of Cumberland, Maryland, and here on Facebook. She actually spread a rumor I used the N-word. Incredible. I would never and have never used this word, vile word. She and her friends, cronies, have sent me vile PMs, I guess private messages. I've been called a child molester, a psycho nut job, and much worse by her cronies. The things they've been saying about me, the rumors they have been spreading are incredible, complete lies, that I molest young girls. I would never do such a thing. Now, this waitress's initials are KL. Her middle name, two initials should probably begin with a K too. KKK, perfect fit for her. However, this is what he's posting on his Facebook, his public Facebook. Okay, just keep this in mind. However, if this harassment continues, I will reveal her full name. These people are always harassing me, trying to intimidate me like bullies. Bullies are always cowards. Yes, if the shoe fits. I did try again to go to this girl's restaurant yesterday and honestly apologize. She was, I was told, not there. I was 100% wrong in my actions with her. I required this girl to wear false eyelashes. I made her feel objectified, cheap, not human. I deeply regret my actions. They were thoughtless and immature. I tried to apologize in a post here on Facebook, but if these people really were still harassing me, I have to have each PM they sent me on file. They'll be reported to Facebook admin now that I'm able to. Unbelievably psycho, mean, nasty stuff. And then he like just goes on and on and on about how he's the victim. But like he was posting, but this is like, this is not even the one, like this is just one of them. Like in another one, wait, let's see. He was like, oh God, it's so bad. It's so bad. Oh, it's like, let me see if I can get it.
I saw some of his.
Okay.
His
so
posts.
I
didn't realize that was him.
No. All right. So this is the post that started it. So I'm on her actual first tweet. So she's like, oh, he's right. This is what he writes. Okay. Please give me your honest, just think about this for a minute.
This is the tweet. This is what I saw.
What is your honest opinion on what I should do now? This is a rather long post, but please bear with me if you can. This happened a few days ago. Okay, I would go to this local restaurant every Wednesday like clockwork. I've been going there every Wednesday for lunch for the past few months. There's a very nice waitress who works there. She's very sweet and kind and fun to talk to. However, this girl would wear these long false eyelashes and she looked incredibly beautiful and sexy with them on. This knockout girl would serve me my food. We would just chat a bit. I would leave her a $20 tip every week like clockwork. This happened. I would always leave her a little note every week telling her she was beautiful, thanking her for being such a great waitress. Yes, I liked to look at her. Daddy. She was beautiful, but I never touched her, insulted her, or said anything crude or rude. Nothing like that ever happened.
Objectify me.
12 days ago, I go in and she wasn't there. It was a family emergency or some such thing. Okay, I understood. First of all, why are you asking why she's not at work? I said I'd be back on Friday. I came in on Friday. She was not wearing the false eyelashes. Okay, I said I was going to come back. So he only wants to see her. She's wearing the false eyelashes. Okay, I said I was going to come back on Sunday. This just gets weird. I don't even know if he realizes how weird this gets. Okay, I said I was going to come back on Sunday. I did. I came back on Sunday. Again, she was not wearing the false eyelashes. Last Wednesday, I did not go in. The fun spell was over. Now, a few months ago, I had her as my waitress for the first time, and she was wearing those false eyelashes. I love that she looked so amazing. I left her a $20 tip. I came in again, and she wasn't wearing them. I was honest. I told her how nice she was, but I liked her wearing the long fake eyelashes. I went back the next day, and she was wearing them. She was 100% aware that I loved looking at her in those false eyelashes, and she always would wear them on Wednesdays. That became our day. I did not know it. I know. As I said, go in last Wednesday. Now, what happened here? Am I a sexist? I liked looking at her with the long eyelashes. Is that really so awful, so mean, so sexist? Why?
Do you really think she goes to work on Wednesdays for your piddly little $20?
It just gets worse. Oh, listen, okay. For any woman, let's say you were in a restaurant and there was a waiter who looked like Brad Pitt or George Clooney or Ryan Gosling.
You don't look like either of them.
You would go in to eat, chat, and get some eye candy, right? So you go in there regularly and eat, right? It's pleasant checking out this gorgeous guy. Now, let's say the same waiter came out one day looking slovenly, unkempt, dirty looking. Let's just remember for a second, she didn't look any of those things. She just wasn't wearing fucking false eyelashes.
Oh my God.
You would be disappointed, right? How exactly is this any different than my situation? I do believe we are spirits, and I do not like to objectify people. That said, I think there is a time and place for everything. And I believe every once in a while, men or women can look at another member of the opposite sex. This guy is fucking crazy. I know this seems to contradict what I just said. I do not want her to feel like an object. I did always make it a point to also tell her what a nice person she was. Do you think what I did was weird or strange? Also, I'm not going back there. Do I owe her a note, a letter of explanation, or should I just end it off? She is, as I say, a kind person. I do not wish to hurt her in any way. One last question to women. Do those fake eyelashes hurt to wear? Do they hurt your eyes to wear them? I'm just trying to figure out why she doesn't wear them all the time. She's an absolute knockout with them. Did I objectify her? Well, why the devil does anyone put on makeup and try to look pretty every morning? Yeah. Okay. And we went in there. No, I have no idea. And he went on with like, why do women wear makeup? Why did and it's like, holy shit, bro. And so now he's claiming that he feels like his life is in danger. And I'm like, bro, you posted all this on your own fucking Facebook page. What the hell? And he's just been dropped by his manager who called him immoral and sexist.
So it's okay for you to say whatever you want and express your opinion. She looks better with her fake eyelashes. I want her to wear her fake eyelashes. I pay this broad $20 a week to wear her fake eyelashes on Wednesday. She let me down. She deserves all this backlash from me. But nobody can say anything about how they feel about you.
All right, no.
Now your life is in danger. Get out of here.
I 100% classify this as stalking. Like, people are like, he's a creep. He's stalking her. He's a creepy stalker. He's going to her work every week. He knows she's working, so she can't just leave. She's stuck there. Yep. And he thinks because he gives her a $20 tip, he's entitled to do this, right? So he's stalking her.
Yes. And
you know,
he has no idea what harm he could potentially be doing to her.
None at all.
None whatsoever. He has no idea who she is, what her history is, and what trauma he could be bringing up for her.
No, but he absolutely thinks she's a nice person because she's cute. And like he's making all these assumptions about her because he likes the way she looks in false eyelashes. Yep. And making all these assumptions about her. And she's not a nice person when she doesn't wear her false eyelashes. And making all these assumptions about her intentions when she's wearing her false eyelashes or makeup or whatever.
It's between us.
Our day. It's like, bro, she's just trying to work a 12-hour shift at the restaurant she works at. And you're the one who's like, so this is what we're dealing with here. And the fact that this person feels like it's totally okay to put that on a public Facebook post because he absolutely doesn't think there's anything wrong with his behavior and that other people are going to, and I'm sure there were other people who did support him. I'm not going to say there is, I'm not that naive. But like, are you fucking for real, bro? Like, seriously.
Kara, get out of here.
Like, I mean, did you read what you wrote? Like, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. And then multiply that by like the nth degree for some of these other people. And this is why, you know, these people feel like their lives are in danger and that they're going to be murdered or something's going to happen to them because, you know, this is the kind of obsessive. And he doesn't even know. And this is one of those things, he doesn't know her. He happened to have seen her as his waitress once. So now, or I don't know if she started out
and
as
he fabricated this connection with her.
Right. He could have just been sitting on the other side of the restaurant, saw her, liked she looked, and then decided he'd always sit in her section. But the fact that he's calling to find out if she's there, calling to find out why she's not there, why isn't she at work? Like, dude, what are you doing? Like, do you understand that? Like, he doesn't realize this behavior that he's doing, that he's perpetuating and doing. I mean, like,
she's less than human. She's nothing more than a set of eyelashes to him.
Right. And because
she has a set of eyelashes.
He has the gall to feel like threatened or just be upset at the fact that this guy is saying this shit about her.
She should be so grateful that he's giving her, you know, she's basically doing a lap dance for him when she comes out in her eyelashes. She's nothing more than a body for him. Like,
but he's not trying to He's not trying to objectify women. That's not what he's about.
Except for her eyeballs. Like, it's just her eyeballs. Like, that's it. I mean, come on. Like, what does she have to complain about?
I think what broke my brain here, like, honest to God, the part of it that broke my head, like, when I read this, and the fact that he posted this on his public Facebook page, acting like he was going to get 100,000 people patting him on the back, being like, "You poor guy." Like, what the fuck? Like, seriously, you know, like, you don't even know better to keep that bullshit behavior to yourself. Like, oh my God. That just drives home how much he doesn't get it. Like, how much he just doesn't understand that this is inappropriate. And this goes back to what I said earlier, is that this behavior is a normal thing for these people. This is what they consider to be a normal reaction to whatever feelings they're having at that moment, whether they're affection, revenge, anger, frustration, desire, obsession, whatever. This to them is an okay way of dealing with it. Like, you know, they don't get it. And this is what makes this so dangerous. You're dealing with people who just don't understand what they're doing to other people. Like, they just, or they absolutely 100% know what they're doing to other people and are making a conscious choice to keep doing it because they know how badly they're infecting the person that they're victimizing.
And that's where they get off on that. They just get off on the harm. And I don't think this guy, I think this guy's just clueless. Like, what a creep show.
Fucking insult, man.
So Mary, what if we have friends who are being stalked? What do we do?
If we have friends that are being stalked, I would talk to them about it. I mean, I can't imagine that if my friend was being stalked, like if you were being stalked, I can't imagine you not feeling relief if I said to you, "No, tell me what's going on here. Like, let me know. Like, tell me. You know, I will promise I will take you seriously. Just tell me what the situation is." I think what people need to remember about stalking as a victim, from a victim's perspective, is that it doesn't matter how I feel, how you feel, how other people feel about the behavior and activities that this person is experiencing. It's about how they feel, because everything that this person is choosing to do to their victim has to do with making them feel a certain way. They don't care if well, it's like a benefit to them if nobody else thinks that it's not scary or whatever. But they know that doing it to you is going to make you scared shitless. So it doesn't matter if I think what they said is harmless. If you're telling me that you scared shitless because they said this, and they're alluding to things like from your past or your history with them, or something that they should not even know anything about because they've done, like, that's the other thing. You start finding these people start digging out in your past down here. This is like you become their fucking project. So I would say right away, you don't judge your friend. Like, don't judge anyone, friend, loved one, whoever. If they're coming to you, or, you get into that conversation and they're now starting to talk to you about what they're experiencing, you need to
just listen
and, reiterate to them that, oh my God, your feelings are valid. I would feel that way too if, I had this history, or if this was what this meant to me. Like, they need to know that they're heard by somebody, because all we keep hearing in the podcast is how they had nobody to talk to. The people they talked to didn't believe them or didn't take it as seriously as they did. Friends were tired of hearing about it. Or we're afraid that they've become victims themselves, so they just could distance themselves away. Family members, the same thing. Especially if it's somebody who's known to the victim, that the victim may have a history with, where other people may have known that person, and their friend's relationship with that perp is so different than the one that you're seeing as a victim, that they're not going to believe anything you say. Like, take what the victim is saying seriously. Like, if they're telling you, I feel this way, if they can show you what they're seeing and doing, like, I mean, that's the first thing, is to listen and be supportive. And then I think encourage them to do something, to get on the defensive now. So whether that's, let's start, you got to start logging all this stuff. You got to start saving all these emails, save all these voicemails, screenshot all these text messages, go to the police and make a report. Don't worry about it if you don't think it's a big deal or not. You don't feel safe, just go. They might laugh you off. Who cares? You have a report. Don't walk out without a case number. Who cares? Like, make them take the report regardless of what you think. Just support them. And I think it's really important to just push them towards taking some sort of action, because a lot of times, even if they feel like threatened or or feel like upset or just unsure, they're doubting their own feelings about this situation, because they're afraid other people are going to see it very differently, and they don't want to get anyone in trouble or look a certain way, hysterical lady or man here. So they're not going to want to go and push for some action. And again, I go back to, if you feel uncomfortable or threatened or something's not good, I don't care if it doesn't seem that way to anybody else. You go and you take care of yourself. Like, you do that.
Another thing we can do is be careful to avoid language that's pretty blamey, like,
oh God, yeah.
Well, what did you say? Or did you sleep with this person? Or oh, you should have left sooner. Or, oh, it's a shame you gave that person your phone number. Like, things like that are just not helpful, and it just, it's kind of a regretful comment, like, oh, I regret that. And of course we do, but like, those are things that, somebody who's having to deal with stalking, like, those are things that person is probably already going to tell themselves.
They're already beating themselves up because they feel like they invited this in.
And even if they gave them their phone number, even if they had a sexual relationship with somebody, stalking is a crime, just like sexual assault, just like murder. Nobody deserves this. So nobody's asking for a crime to be committed upon them. So we can just, be careful about our language when we're talking to our friends. And as a victim of stalking, you you can be careful with the people that you choose to reveal this information with, and feel free to let your filter down when you find that that person is somebody that you can trust, and tell them that those words are not the words that you need. Another thing you can do is be the one to check the email. Be the one. Get a second phone. Get a second phone that you use with your support system only, and let that stalker just keep calling your phone number, so that you're not like paying over and over and over and over and over for new phones. Like, let your stalker keep calling your phone number. Get a second phone for your network people, and if you're that friend, you be the one to check the mail. You be the one to check the emails, and then be that advocate until your friend can get connected with an advocacy group. Like, it's exhausting work, but hey, when you get together a network of people that can help, like, you can share the load. Because as exhausting as it would be for you to help your friend who's a victim of stalking, like, try being the victim of stalking. Like, just try it for a day, and I bet you'd rather be checking emails and voicemails.
I think the other thing to say to people who are victims is, obviously some stalkers are way more motivated than others. And, their level of how intent they are on destroying your entire life varies from person to person. But, we hear countless stories of how this stuff starts getting brought into the workplace. And I would just say that if you have a good relationship in your work environment and something starts happening in your work environment, I would come and be clean and be honest with them about what's going on and letting them know what's going on. Because I think once you start trying to hide it or deny it, and it becomes something bigger, and you have to deal with it when it becomes a bigger issue, it can be really difficult, and it can be really, and I think all you're doing by letting them know is kind of, and you can, be as open as you need to be or not be. But like, it's better for you to be honest and say, look, this is what's going on. I have this stalker. I've had them for like X number of years. This is what they like to do. So I'm just letting you know, because in the past they've done X, Y, and Z at my job. So if you ever see like an email or something, like, it's better to be upfront about the behavior than later on having to explain to somebody who's probably confused about whatever misunderstanding or whatever is happening that, what do you mean you had a stalker? You've worked here for 3 years and you never mentioned that you had somebody here. All of a sudden you're posting this stuff to our client list. So like stuff like that. And I mean, like I said, you don't have to go into detail unless you feel comfortable or necessary. But I would let to me, it's like, I would let as many people know as possible, because you're just in a sense taking away some of the power from the person who's victimizing you, because they bank on the fact that nobody's going to support you, nobody's going to believe you, nobody wants to hear about it.
That you're embarrassed and you're ashamed.
Right. This is a crime that's all about making you feel all sorts of bad emotions and pestering the shit out of you. Excuse me.
Bless you.
So, thank you. So, they're banking on the fact that if they just keep pestering and harassing, sooner or later, people aren't going to want to hear about it anymore. So, why just beat them off at the pass and just straight out tell people, like, this is something I'm dealing with in my life. I'm really sorry if you should ever like have to see something. We've heard stories where, people have had to leave social gatherings because their stalkers have shown up. They have to be careful of where they go in public because their stalkers know where they are. They don't want to be photographed, or like, what do you call it? They don't want to have any geotags on pictures that they put up, because they don't want these people to know where they are at that moment. So these are things that you have to think about. And frankly, if these are people that care about you, they should not be too big of a deal to them to have to deal with. So that's my opinion on that. We've talked about creep show art. We've talked about other ancillary kind of offshoot things that have happened with that, and like that we've seen on the net or in our social media. And like, I know I've said this before, and I'm just going to say it again, that we're talking about victims and like, it's like, I just want people to listen, if for no other reason, to listen to this podcast. I would love it if people would listen to it, to just see the level of loss and destruction that these victims experience at the hands of these people. Yes, we mentioned losing friends and family. They lose their jobs. They lose their homes. They lose relationships. They go bankrupt. They lose their car, their houses, they can lose everything. They lose their reputations. They lose every single thing that, you take pride in having in your life.
And they get no justice.
And the justice is ridiculous.
They just have to make peace with it. They have to find some way to make peace with it. They're violated physically. They're violated emotionally. They're violated in so many ways. And they just have to make peace with it some way. And even the ones who get justice, it's like 2 years, 5 years, maybe 10 years if there's some aggravating factor and some other crime that they can lump in there. And then it's just whatever, it's just like whatever. And somehow these people, some of these women and men find a way to like create these advocacy groups because nobody else will,
Right. And I mean, like, every time they have to go to court or deal with this, it's like being re-victimized again and again and again. And the reality of the situation is this, like, think about this for a moment. Like, even if your abuser went to prison, right? So like they say that the only way you kind of get rid of a stalker is if they die, they find another person to obsess on, or, they go to prison for the rest of their lives where they don't have access to certain things, right? So, so say your offender goes away for like 3 or 4 years, if you're lucky. You have no idea if they're spending 4 years obsessing about you the entire time that they're in prison, thinking about what they're going to do, and that the day that they walk out that door, it's all going to start again. I mean, you're living on edge constantly. And the sad part is that you're not always, as a victim, and if they do go to, it's not 100% guaranteed that you're going to be let know that they're coming out of prison, that they've been released.
Even for parole. For parole.
Right. So you're living in a state of heightened anxiety and stress as well.
Forever.
Constantly, unless you know that your stalker is going to prison for life, or that they dropped it.
Or that they died.
So, and it's that, again, like the sense of loss, you've lost everything. I mean, these people are so good at manipulating other people. We've heard stories where the victim has become the victimizer because the stalker is so good at twisting the situation and making them look like they're the victim, and people believe it. We've seen victims become arrested for behavior that their stalker did to them, that they made look like it was the opposite. I mean, like, these people are not stupid. They know what they're doing, and they've thought about it for a long time. So, and their sole existence is to like put terror into your like heart, to let you know that they are thinking about you. And we've heard that many victims have said that their stalkers have straight out said to them, they're not going to stop until their entire life is destroyed. And there's been stories of that have come out, that these people have lost, they have lost everything. So that is extraordinarily heartbreaking to listen to. And, it's one of the reasons why I get really angry when we talk about, I hear people talking about stalking the crime and not, calling it a crime like it actually is, or, making light of the behavior that very much is criminal behavior, or stalking, is stalking and may lead up to some like palpable criminal behavior.
Right.
So, I wish that people would just, if anything, listen to this podcast and, listen to these victims talk about their experiences. It's heartbreaking, and it makes you angry. And people have died. Like, we've had stories on here now told by relatives or friends where their victims have died because of this behavior. Like, these people can ratchet up, go from like 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds with behavior, depending upon how they perceive what's going on. So it's serious. It's not a joke. Yeah, that's kind of all I have for this. I mean, next Wednesday, I really do want to talk about some of these really insane ones, whether it's, oh my God, how long it's been going on for, or what the things that these people were experiencing, or the complete injustice that they got, however we want to define it. But there are definitely a couple of episodes that I was like, whoa, that stopped me dead in my tracks listening to, where I was like, there were a couple I was like crying during, because I was just like, can't believe I'm like hearing these people. Like, you just can't help it. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. There were quite a few really just outrageous episodes, and
these people are exhausted. Like, they're exhausted on every level from having to deal with this, on every level.
Yeah.
And how many of them did they ask, is the stalking still going on? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I haven't heard them in.
I haven't heard a couple of months, but it's probably time. Or it's still happening up until, it's been happening. Yesterday was the last. I mean, like, that's the situation here. These are not people we're not listening to the triumphant voices of people who've been stalked. This is like people who are really in the shit right now.
Yes.
It's awful. It's really awful. So, but on that note, it's also wonderfully done. I will say that.
Yes.
The hosts are very good. The hosts are excellent. Let me see if I can. I don't know their names off the top of my head.
Jamie Beebe and I can't remember Dustin.
What are you all like?
Oh, I got it right here.
Okay.
Jamie Beebe and Jake Deptula.
Okay. So, and they started this podcast at the end of last year, I think. Or maybe they're up to episode
79 or 73.
Yeah. This started on January 8th, 2020. So it started at the beginning of last year.
And it just took off.
They do an excellent job. I think even they can't believe how much it took off, how fast it took off, and how much it resonated with people who are victims. Because all they hear is victims thanking them so much for giving them this place that they can talk about this. Mm-hmm. Victims have mentioned that they've connected with each other via the podcast, which is also a good thing. They've mentioned how they've thought they were the only person ever experiencing something like and then they hear something similar happening to them from someone else, and it's like life-changing to them. And they're very good at just letting folks tell their stories. Like, obviously they ask questions, but they let the story go where it needs to go. Mm-hmm. And the question they always ask, me too. They let the victim tell their story, and they ask every time what they would like to see happen to their stalker, and it's like they all say, I just want them to get help. And I'm like, God, you people are so much nicer than me. Like, God love you.
Excuse me. I think they've been through the gamut of feelings. When you've run through the gamut of feelings, and you come to the conclusion that these people are so sick. They are so sick, and they deserve to be punished. but punishment is not going to make them better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think these people are like rehabable. Like, I just don't think. I mean, one woman was like,
you have to hope that they are, because otherwise it's just a lifetime of stalking for these poor people or somebody else.
Yeah.
So you have to hope that they are.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of it sounds like severe. A lot of it sounds like a lot of mental illness.
Yeah.
Or personality disorders. You know, there was one woman who's like, I have my concealed carry license and I have a gun, and I don't really care. Mm-hmm. Like, sounds good. Like, I'm there. I hear you.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to live like that though? Like, I got my concealed carry license years ago, and I have 2 guns, but then I'm like, I'd never carry because I'm not prepared to live with the consequences of what that would be like. And who imagine like having to be prepared to live with those consequences because somebody pushed you in that corner.
I think you have to really feel like you've lost just about everything, and this is not, what else is there? What's left, right? I mean, that's
right.
And in some of these cases, I see it completely. I'd be like, I don't fucking care. You've taken everything from me. So, I mean, like, God, we've heard stories of kids being taken away from parents. I mean, like, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I can't even, like, we'll talk about it more on Wednesday, but, like, people just give it a listen. It's very well done. Production's very well. I think they're like booked out forever, but they're still taking people. So if you have a story or you want to tell your side, you can still reach out to the podcast. They are on Twitter. Their Twitter handle is Stalking Podcast. So they are on Twitter. You can reach out there.
You can also reach out on Instagram.
Oh, they are. I'm not on Instagram, so I am. You're on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. We got it covered. I think with that, like, that's the show for Monday.
I think so.
Thank you to everybody who's watched or watching on the replay. We really appreciate it. Our contact information is in the description. So if you want to comment or let us know what you think or have a question, please feel free to contact us or leave a comment. If you have a show topic you'd like to possibly see, feel free to leave that. Again, we have a list of resources that are in the description, and I will also update them they're also in the comments here. I will also update the description with a for further reading section if you'd like to check out some of the stuff that we talked about today and a couple other more in-depth definitions or guidelines for what we discuss on the legal side of things and evidence collection side of things. So Wednesday, we're going to be talking about cases from the actual podcast. That's coming Wednesday. I don't know yet what we're talking about next week. Wednesday, we're going to be back on 7. We'll be back on 7 p.m. I think, because I'm not going to be able to be home from work at 5. Sorry. We'd like to remind everybody, if you like our content and you aren't already subscribed to us on YouTube, feel free, comment, subscribe. If you're on Twitch and you like our content, please feel free to follow or subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate all of the support that y'all have given us.
Yes, we do.
We do. If you're looking for if you're new to Twitch and looking for interesting content, please check out all the streamers that we link off of our Twitch page. We have great stuff there from DJs streaming music to gamers. DJs and gamers, pretty much, that's the people we hang out with. That's who we hang out with. Let's be real. There's some good stuff.
Yes, we're the anomaly.
Yeah, we're the anomaly. We're the only ones who talk at length about anything. Everybody else is like, whatever. They talk while they game, but it's mostly about gaming. So
they're not topical. We're topical.
No, we're topical.
We're refreshing. We're refreshing and topical. We try.
So I just made something weird happen on my screen. Check those folks out. They let them know where you came from. And again, if you like us, give us a follow or subscribe to us. We appreciate it. Having said that, Angie, thank you so much for joining me again and for the great discussion. I really enjoyed it.
I'm looking forward to this one.
Yes, me too. I love it, but not really, but I do. You know what I mean.
Well, you know what I mean.
I know. Have a great rest of your evening, guys.
You
and
too.
Have a great Tuesday, and we will
See
talk to
Wednesday.
you on Wednesday. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.